Talking Parents is your all-in-one co-parenting communication solution with messaging that is organized, searchable, and timestamped. Phone and video calling that is recorded and automatically transcribed. A shared calendar that lets you control and keep track of edits. And all activity is documented in our court-admissible, unalterable records. Secure, accountable communication. Talking Parents. Learn more at talkingparents.com.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Co-Parenting Success Summit, Happy Kids in Two Homes. It's all about strategies to create healthy family relationships, a sense of stability for everyone in the family, and raise happy kids before, during, or after divorce. I'm Mark Pearson, certified divorce coach, mentor, and speaker. I work with dads or moms with young kids up to 18 years old and help them get through the rough spots in their divorce and save money along the way. I help people at any stage of their divorce, whether it's the beginning, middle, or when their agreement is already in place. And today with us, is Donovan Dreyer, the teen takeoff coach. And hey, Donovan, how are you, man?
Doing great, thanks.
Fantastic. Donovan finished a degree in aviation and then realized his own flight plan was off course. And since then, he spent nearly 2 decades preparing teens to help them realize their dreams. And something that's kind of unique about both Donovan and I is that we've both realized to sort of course correct there in our own lives. So to be able to help individuals course correct on their own, because I have a background as a yacht captain. And so kind of a parallel industry is aviation. You know, people talk about captaining things and that sort of stuff. And so Donovan's going to be speaking about assessing and addressing stress for parents and kids. But Donovan, before then, please share a little bit more about your background and kind of like how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So it was 1993, sitting in Zingerman's Deli in Ann Arbor, Michigan, when I was meeting with a captain. And you just like a quick tip for the day, people take this away right away, is do an informational interview before you get all the way through your whole educational process. So I was done. I was finished with all my aviation degrees and got the major and got my certifications to fly and everything. And this captain just had such an eye of the tiger for flying, like this twinkle in his eye. And I just knew, like, in that moment that I needed to do some soul searching, that I knew, like, we got this one life to live. And it was amazing for my confidence to learn to fly. And I knew, like, you know, I could always go back to that. But it was just in this moment that I knew I needed to do something that was just as exciting for me and just as perfect in terms of purpose, that I could see this other gentleman was hardwired to do. And so I set off to figure that out. And eventually the thing that kind of really captured my heart was just the kids when I saw the combine shooting happen. And when that happened in the late 90s, I was in this process of figuring out what to do next. And for me, it was like, that's it. This is a calling. That's got my heart in the game, just kind of like that pilot was well suited for flying. And so ever since then, I've been trying to navigate through and figure out how we can make the stress not get to that point of such a crisis, or the point where we're either going to do harm to somebody else or harm to ourselves. And so that's why I jumped into the front lines before there was such a thing as a frontliner of the high schools. And became a school counselor, and I worked 17 years there, 3 years at the elementary school level. And then I've also been serving teens as a coach lately, with that main focus on how do we optimize our mental health? I mean, we talk about physical health, there's not a negative connotation with it, but a lot of times when you hear just mental health together, it means like, oh, that must imply a problem. But we can optimize our mental health. And one of the things I really discovered from that moment with the captain in Zingerman's Deli, and then to my own life, and then now what I see teenagers lacking is that sense of direction that really gets us on point with our purpose in life. And instead of having to course correct like 180 degrees, like maybe you and I have done, maybe some little course corrections, if we get much more serious about helping the kids optimize their mental health, by getting the career direction right. So that's one of the main things I focus in on. And what we'll be talking about today is one of the key pieces when it comes to also the whole spectrum of things that could be going on in the inner world of kids through a divorce or through anything in life, really.
Interesting. Oh, well, fantastic. Thanks for sharing your background there. And so let's dive into your topic there about assessing and addressing stress for parents and kids. So what would you like to start off with? Let's jump right in.
Yeah, I can share a chart here in a moment. And the thing was, I had to triage a few times in schools after, either some serious drama would happen for an individual and there'd maybe be a line out the door on some days as a high school counselor, or we had a serious tragedy at one point in a 2-week span. We actually lost 3 of our kids to completed suicides. So that was,
individual suicides?
3 different kids, in a 2-week span. So that was kind of like a real shake you to the core moment, because
for sure
the other school counselors actually were out of town. I was the only one left in town because it happened right during one of our breaks. And so it was just me kind of rallying the community together. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is just, even just to experience the loss and the grief and everything yourself as a community member, or 3 community members are lost. It was a big game changer. And one of the moms just was so adamant about not having this happen in vain. And she was like, Donovan, can you do something to kind of spot these things sooner for some other mom, some other family, some other, student? And I was just like, I took that to heart. I didn't want this to happen in vain, because I don't think things happen for a reason. We actually have to make the reason out of it. And for me, that's what that mom kind of set the gears in motion for, is how to actually spot things sooner. So I really now have developed X-ray vision into the mental health of students and help others develop the same thing. And that's what we'll do next, is how do you actually see into kids to keep them safe?
Okay. So what does that look like? What's that X-ray vision?
Yeah, I'm going to pull up a chart here. So we got a couple things. I think I want to go to this one first. I didn't get these in the right order, but that's all right. We'll go to,
no problem.
We'll go to my first one. So this is the first design. I'll pull this up and blow it up a little bit bigger.
Okay.
What I realized is it's kind of like the other one you can see is totally a traffic light. Before it became a traffic light, though, it was this idea of there's a few different levels. If we really get into these crazy moments of life where the fight, flight, and freeze is happening up there in that red zone, what mom was asking is there something that we can spot before it gets severe, before the crisis, so to speak.
Right.
And what I realized just through conversing with kids, kind of can make a pretty long process to figure this out super short, is that the number system didn't work for me. If a kid's on a scale of 1 to 10.
Okay, right. Yeah, scale of 1 to 10. Yeah.
Arbitrary. Yeah. Kids, some kids are I'm never coming in that school counseling office unless it's off the charts. And other kids are well, it's a 0.5, on if my stress goes up a little bit, Mr. Dreyer, can I come talk to you? And I'm I think you want to get out of class. So the numbering didn't help me at all. And it didn't help the kids because it was totally arbitrary. But then I thought about where our decision making is not arbitrary, is driving around in a car, or when we really have to make decisions off of where we're at. So there's a bazillion emojis. We definitely have super subtleties of emotions that it's great to get to know. But at first, we just need to be super clear about which of these 3 levels we're in. So what I discovered is kind of healthy stress. It is good to have something besides just video games or sitting on the couch forever. So we do want to have a little bit of stress. And then, if it gets up into the yellow range, that happens pretty commonly. But that yellow section is this kind of magical section that kind of evolved. So it's not just either I go to the school counselor or I don't. What this mom was looking for is something in between. Well, how do we spot this when it gets to, a pre-crisis, so that we can actually turn that around and prevent it? So, I guess I could draw a little stuff on here too, kind of annotate a little bit on this.
Sure. Yeah, we hear it often about that pre-crisis. If someone was only able to be reached a little bit earlier, something may have been able to, been a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, to keep it in perspective too, like if we think about before the pandemic, like we were in the green as a whole human populace,
Right.
and then we at least moved to there right away. And then from there, we've probably been hanging out here a great majority of a couple of years, like 2-3 years. A lot of people have been kind of on the edge or teetering on the brink, or maybe even a little, like a lot of people up into that red
Sure.
more than any time in human history. So
Mhm.
we're all kind of like just holding it together during the pandemic. And so that's kind of the chart of where we were kind of as a human populace for quite a while. Maybe some people could really pull it together during the pandemic and be in the green anyway. And that's great because we need somebody to kind of lean on and help us, during those tough times.
Right. Those strong shoulders.
Yeah, but like individuals could be like this in this pre-crisis zone. And what we want to do is make sure it doesn't go from there on upwards into that red zone. So we want to be able to prevent if it's getting toward that level. And so I literally just had a whiteboard before I even had, something like this put together, and it would just have kids point. If they couldn't even use their words, I would have them point, and they'd be like, well, what's the green mean? What does the yellow mean? And what does the red mean? And what these lines are is they're very clear. So if we think about, well, what is it to cross this yellow line here? It means you can no longer self-regulate. So the whole healthy stress level is about you can DIY it. So over here, the source of support over here, I guess I'll use a text here and just like DIY.
DIY.
You're going to do it yourself. You're going to help yourself out.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, up here, it's totally the school counselor. So you got to come to the counselor.
Right.
So that's kind of like the two no-brainer levels. But the problem is a lot of kids don't want to go to the counselor because there's kind of a stigma about this. But that's where in here we can have our trusted team. Like we need to have our positive peers around us. We need to have our family members that we connect well with. We need to have our parents, our coaches, our teachers. So these people are not the school counselor, but a lot of times you got 600 kids, 700 kids, 1,000 kids in a school as a school counselor. These kids are going to have tighter connections with one of the teachers that they see every day, one of the coaches they see every day. Their best friends are going to be able to help them at this level. So we really need to be building up this level of system of support. So if we're going through a divorce and we really think about, well, who, like if mom and dad are having tough times, do we have uncles, aunts, grandmothers, grandfathers? Do we have these other people in the family that could really be that trusted team during these tough times so that we're not like just thinking this is all going to work out? Because if we erase that, if this isn't there, then as soon as we go from DIY, we're going straight to this, crisis level.
Yeah. Like
if mom and dad are unstable and it's tough times, well, then
lots of uncertainty. What's going to happen to me? Where's the stability in my life?
Yep, you're going to go just like this. Going to go from here to I'm doing okay, to bam, straight to red.
Yeah.
It's going to skip yellow if we don't have somebody in this trusted team of support level. So we can undo that and give that trusted team back. So the left-hand side of the chart. So what this evolved is like some files. We would file papers after kids would come back from tough mental health times. And we would do these 9 columns in a bunch of paperwork. But I realized on one sheet, it would be really good to know what our sources of support are. It would really good to know what the sources of stress are. And it'd be divorce, right? So it'd be divorce. It would push this up here. And then the signs of stress. What does Johnny show that's different from Susie? What are these different things that somebody might show? Somebody might be more quiet. Another kid might be like having sleep problems or something like that. Or another one might be louder and more rambunctious and more animated and change of behavior. So it's really good to fill out these other, 9 columns. We don't have time for that today, but that's how this started to evolve, is just to be able to put 3 plots on here. If you ask a kid how they're doing today, let's maybe go to some circles here.
Interesting.
You ask them how they're doing today, and they're kind of, they're yellow, but it's not too bad. And yesterday was good, and the day before was good. You kind of have normalcy here, or it could be like, okay, that's like maybe this is today.
Yeah.
So now we got a bit of a trend here. The last 3 days, it's up and up and up, and the stress is rising. So this is what it means to have X-ray vision. Is let's have a kid point here, 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 and here, and they don't have to say, I feel sad, or I feel angry, or I feel depressed. They can just point. And this is what a lot of the guys would do too, is the high school guys would just be like, point, point, point. I'll give you 2-3 points of time. and I don't want to like get into my feelings. And it's like, okay, you're totally aware of what these different levels are distinguished by. Oh, and then the red, what that's distinguished by is we cross the red zone when we are not enough to handle it on our own, and our trusted team is not there, in a strong enough way because it's just too big of a problem. That's where it's great to get therapy or get a counselor in the mix and say, okay, let's be proactive with this. We can assume that all the trusted teammates in the world, and you're DIYing it all the best you can as a 10-year-old or 15-year-old or whatever. We're totally going to need to think about how we're going to proactively get some help through this divorce, and let's nip it in the bud before it even gets to that crisis level. Or maybe it's already there in the red because of a divorce, but let's get it down. Let's figure out a way to get that stress down again and get it back into the green zone, get our inner world green again, so to speak.
Yeah. Interesting.
So yeah, go ahead. I just kind of took over there for a little bit, but
yeah, no, I didn't know if you had another slide that you were going to carry on to, but yeah. So a question that as I look at that, how does one know kind of on their own, either as an outsider looking in, say in that support team, or as an individual that's crossing that red line? Have you any sort of assessments or skills or recommendations, tools that people use to sort of recognize that, like, gosh, extra help, extra support really is needed here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it can't hurt to have extra support at any given time. You think about when somebody's mental health is totally optimal, they're still getting like coaches and support like that. So think about Michael Phelps. One of the things that happened for me with somebody that's amazing like that has like 8 coaches when they're the best in the world at something. Really, it's always good to have support. So being more proactive with that, I think we got to get rid of this stigma and be on the safer side and really build up that system of support intentionally and proactively. But when it comes to crossing that red zone, sometimes somebody else can spot that better.
Yeah.
Sleep patterns change, when the behavior patterns change, when the communication style changes, or when the self-care changes, or when you can just see like some signs that just seem like things are in disarray or the stress is really high. It's better to be safe than sorry. But really, these kind of things become, when you see somebody being receptive to, sometimes you can really see a turnaround if you're pouring into somebody as a trusted teammate in the regular part of life. You can see a change for the better. Like aunt comes in, uncle comes in, somebody trusted comes in during a divorce, and you could really see them soak that up and get a change for the better. Then that helps. But just straight up asking kids too. Teach them how to, turn this crazy world of emotions into just 3 things, and all of our self-awareness can get better. I've taught this to elementary school kids, so we can kind of circle back to that in a minute. I developed with high school kids. Totally, like, self-awareness can be tricky enough for all adults, because for all of human history,
absolutely,
we haven't really had a way to simplify this. So this really, really does help to just straight up ask, and then also be the extra eyes. So if we're all using the same system of, oh man, I feel like this might be kind of a red moment I'm seeing in my best buddy, then that's great to actually have the same system to be on alert when you see something that's really out of whack.
Got it. Okay, and so you touched a little bit there about the differences between, say, teens and younger kids, and can you go into that a bit deeper now?
Yeah, I think the teens are going to be a little bit more comfortable with a chart like this. And then the kids, I actually was not an elementary school counselor, but one of my elementary school counselor counterparts was asking, what works for the littler, like the younger kids. Bouncing all around here, but this chart,
no problem,
works a little bit better for the younger kids, where it's just like 3. You only have 3 options: today, yesterday, and the day before. And then the colored emojis. Before these were really out there, I invented these 3 emojis of the happy face, the meh face, and the frowny face. And now I just saw it at the dorms for food. So this has really caught on across the world as a really basic way to get super clear when we're rating something, thumbs up, thumbs down, or we want a little bit more ability to rate something. So the little kids are going to be much better off with working with just, like, again, still pointing. But you need to educate them as well on how to understand what's the difference between the green, yellow, and red.
Mhm.
And the faces are a little bit friendlier, and the idea of a traffic light, I'll have them play red light, green light as a warm-up when I teach it to the elementary school kids. And so they
Oh,
get that
interesting.
concept really easily. And so I want to make it just as easy for them when it comes to understanding their inner world as well. So at a super, super, super young level, where it's possible to help kids one of those most difficult topics, like your inner world, your self-awareness, mindfulness. Well, it's really, really easy if we just teach kids there's 3 levels, and everybody else in the school is also using the 3 levels, or everybody else in the family is using the 3 levels for mindfulness. Now, all of a sudden, it's visual, it's a common language, it's universal. We understand how this applies to doing, what we do and don't do. And that's where one more thing I teach is.
And if people save these over time, that's when they start to see the trends.
Yeah, I mean, if I had an app, and I think there's been apps made with a similar concept since I came up with this, that you can track this over the course of years, even, or days, weeks, and months for sure.
Yeah.
So one of the things I do is just give 3 simple to-dos. So at the green level, you're going to keep using your skills and just self-regulate. At the yellow level, you need to find one of those trusted teammates. You don't yet need to go to the counselor, go to a professional. And the red is get professional help. So there's a lot of different emotions and emojis, and all this stuff inside can be so nebulous, but it really comes down to these are the 3 things to do.
Got it.
The end. Like,
Makes
that's
a lot of
These
sense.
are the 3.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Keep
just
it
like
simple,
at the traffic
smart.
light when we're driving.
Right. Yeah.
And finally, I guess one more is the don't do. So if we got the do, we want the
Don't do. What does that look like? Oh, here we go. Okay.
Yeah. So if it's green, like, we can freak out as parents, especially, if there's, something like a divorce going on, and we can freak out at all times, really, as parents. But it does a disservice to helicopter if it's green level stress. It is healthy stress. I mean, I shouldn't do air quotes because it's healthy stress. When we're self-regulating, that's actually working our emotional intelligence. And then if we're conflict, if there's some conflict between siblings, or if there's, something that just needs to be, hey, I can lean on somebody right now. I don't need to be that parent that jumps in to save the day either, because again, we're doing them a disservice, because we'll get some conflict resolution skills. We'll get the skills to see, like, how we can build up more people that we can have in our trusted network. So we don't want to jump into referee too quickly and help them out. And that's kind of unusual. I've had kids pull on my sleeve at the recess and say, come help us out during the football game, or, Foursquare. And I'll be like, no, I can show a little system I've taught at the elementary school level in a minute of how they actually do this on their own, and what's a super simple thing to teach them. So we don't need to jump into referee. And then finally, if it's red zone, we don't want to be, a school counselor just sends a kid back to class and say, I see the red signs, but the kid doesn't see it. So it's up to them to figure it out. Well, we can't leave that to them.
Yeah.
If we're spotting these red flags, and we see this a lot, that's what a lot of the language is out there, is there's all these red flags, mental health wise, but we don't know what to do.
Right.
Well, it's time to get a professional. It's an emergency. Just like, oh, he got his arm, like, gashed with, and he needed like 50 stitches, but we didn't know what to do. That wouldn't happen. So the same thing with mental health. We've got to get these guys some help when they need it. So I'll let you dive in if anything's coming to you, and I'll pull up one more thing to share here.
Yeah, no, just roll with it. This is all great. All right, and then cool. After you share this last one, we could hear a little bit more about how you do work with people, and what that all looks like.
Yeah, so one of the things I taught the little kids is this yellow zone. If there is something and they're tugging on my shirt and they're saying, come over and help us out, and they stare at me like a deer in the headlights when I'm not rushing over there to see who's wrong and who's right, and play judge, jury, and so on. I'll just tell them, look, I've already taught you how to do this with our little taco break exercise. So if it's yellow level, you guys got to work it out on your own. And they'll just stand there for a minute like, dude, why are you not coming over? Every other adult is going to come over and rescue the situation. I'm like, no, I don't want to take away your opportunity. You go work out the thing we learned. And so it's like they call T in football or whatever. So it's call T for talking about it. So that's the first step, is just like, okay, this game is getting ruined. right now. So we got to just, do something about it. So the person who initiates it is the one that gets to go first. And then you switch, and then you have the other person share their piece. And if it can't be worked out, we're done. We don't need to get crazy and come up with some kind of complex solution. We just take a break. You can always come back at another recess and work it out.
Yeah.
And then it dawned on me, as I have a little bit more complex situation where you're like mediating things at the high school or with adults. And I'm thinking, I think this one's better for adults too. This would work really well a lot of times. It's asking a lot of ourselves and whoever we're in conflict with to try and get our A game back on. It's better to just kind of cool off, take a break, and maybe we want to share our feelings, share our needs, and then let's just take a break. So
yeah.
I think this works pretty much at all age levels, honestly. But
all
this is a
ages.
really easy one. That's
all
a really
ages and abilities. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, that's how we all can have the exact same universal visual system to get to understand mindfulness, self-awareness, student awareness, other awareness. We want to have other awareness to be able to spot these red flags, or even before they become red flags, spot those warning signs that show that somebody's in the yellow. Let's get it prevented. Let's nip it in the bud. And then the optimal way to do this is to keep it in the green and yellow. Let's keep it waving and bobbing and weaving between green and yellow.
Sure. Yeah. In the healthy area, and a little bit of good stress, and maybe even a little bit more uncomfortable stress, but to keep it down in those zones.
Yes.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So yeah, that's the system I thought would be very beneficial to, families going through tough times and, navigating through that challenging process of going through a divorce. So I think this is something that is super, super important for us to get on the same page with.
Super pertinent.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so what would it look like for people to get in touch with you, and who do you typically work with? And is it all online work that you do? Tell us some more about your actual work that you do with people.
Yeah, I've got a couple like Colorado clients, but I mostly am working online through Zoom. So the way to get a hold of me, I am most active on Facebook, followed by Instagram. So just my Facebook Donovan Dreyer personal profile is a easy way to go. I can hunt for that as we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
And then Instagram is just Donovan.Dreyer as well. So messaging me on either of those places is where a lot of other people are too, where they're pretty active. So those are options. And then my website is getreadycoaching.com. So
getreadycoaching.com. Great. And then, so what does it look like? So you've got this resource, right? This tool for people. And do you have a program, or do you do one-on-one coaching? What does your actual service look like?
Yeah, I'll pull up and share there's not probably that many Donovan Dryers out there, but there's a couple. I had to do Donovan Dreyer number 2. So there you go. That's what it is. Donovan.Dreyer 2. So this Gen Z takeoff is kind of the thing uniformly across my brand. And so the idea is to, launch what I call the high flyers out of the nest into the world. So that's really my focus. All the things that I did out of school counseling, what I loved the most is getting the thing that I got wrong, get that right. So the captain got it right. I eventually got it right. And ultimately, like, struggling through that decision-making process and not getting it right now has me on a mission to help the high flyers. And what high flyers are is these kids that actually, if I'm a school counselor, I really don't have a ton of time for them because there's a lot of crisis things to put out. But the high flyers are these kids that really would love to do something special in the world, and they need that extra layer of support. So like a swimming analogy would be, if Michael Phelps had lots of coaches, well, that was to win gold medals. And so that's the kind of coaching I love to do. If somebody's like drowning, like that's more the school counselor role, or something that's more of a lifeguard that somebody can't swim or something's bad happening, that would not be as much of a fit. So the high flyer kids really are the ones that I think are the next difference makers, the next leaders, the next big dreamers, or maybe they need to be ratcheting up their dreams in life. And so those are the kids I love to work with. I typically will start with a free consultation with maybe parents and kids, or maybe a 5, 10, 15-minute call with the parents on Zoom.
That was going to be a question of mine. Is the actual client the parents, and they kind of pay for their kids, or what does that look like?
The parents typically pay for the kids. I do have kids that are in their 20s, and they're paying their own way for their coaching or paying a part of it. So yeah, the age range is right now, I think they're 18 to 21 at the moment.
Yeah.
I've had
Okay.
kids that are 17, and that's, I mean, it's the serious kids. So I've had sophomores in high
Launching
school
into
that are pretty
college.
serious and wanting to, really make sure they're setting themselves up with the most advantages possible on top of their AP classes and community service. They want the coaching. But yeah, typically once the kids are like, 18, seniors in a gap year, or maybe their first or second year out of high school, like they're in college, that's really the time when they're feeling like, okay, I really want to get this right. And the parents are wanting them to get it right as well. So that's perfect. And it's typically one-on-one coaching that I'm doing right now. So I've got a few slots left and available for one-on-one coaching. And I start with the parents typically to have that conversation to see if the kid might be interested and they want to bring into the conversation. And then it'll be myself and parents and kids working together to figure out what their big dream is, what the number one goal is, and then what their biggest challenge is, figure out like what that plan and path might be and how I can support. And then we just pick it up from there to see if it's a fit.
Fantastic. Super cool.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned about a discovery call, and sometimes that's with the individual, sometimes it's with them and or one or two parents.
Yeah, I mean, it's only individual really when the kids are like beyond like 18, 19, 20.
Yeah.
Typically it's parents and kids together that, parents are definitely making most of the investment, if not all of it. And, sometimes they'll be in the whole conversation. But typically it's beyond that, it's working with the kids one-on-one. And, so we're just going to make that decision first off with a free consultation.
Right. And how long does that last?
I will do an initial call with parents, like, 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And then the Zoom calls with everybody on board is typically like an hour, a little bit more than an hour.
I see. Got it. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, this was super inclusive. Is there anything else that maybe you would like to include, or that,
I think less is more, honestly. Like when we
Yeah.
look at this inner world of ours, I think the crazy counterintuitive thing is the most profound things like this traffic light are super, super, super simple.
Super simple.
So I don't want to muddle
Doesn't
it up.
get too much more simple than that.
It doesn't, but
Yeah.
this is a big, big breakthrough. So we don't want to miss all the red flags. Honestly, I didn't even know there was yellow flags until I got that plea from that mom that just said,
Right.
how do we spot this sooner?
Right.
Well, we won't spot it if there's 80 bazillion different ideas we come up with. Like we won't go from
It's too
Colorado
much.
to different states and say, oh, we got purple lights over here at the traffic lights. And hey,
right.
we only have those on
Yeah.
every other corner. It's too expensive to put them at every intersection.
You're right.
Like when we really adopt a system that everybody uses universally, that's when we've got magic to keep our kids safe.
Yeah. Fantastic. I love it. I'm sure everyone
Awesome.
out there does today too, as well. And anyone that's looking at the recording, watching the recording of this.
Absolutely.
So-
Well, I'm happy to have dove in today. And if there's anything else to kind of reiterate with it, it's just like keep it simple and ask the questions. Ask kids how they're feeling, how they're doing, and they're generally going to be very honest. And if you're not feeling they are, well, then teach the aunt, the uncle, whoever it is that's a trusted support person, this
In
simple
that support
system,
group.
and then let them use the same system. And then, okay, now they're telling me it's red. So kids are generally going to find somebody they truly, truly trust. And that's why it's kind of good to have some objective outside people that they can be honest with and open up to. And then, if it's a red situation, none of us should be holding that a secret. None of us should be trying to, hold their confidence. It's okay to say to a kid, hey,
to like go it on their
but
own.
if you're red, I got to let somebody else know. So be transparent with them, be open and honest with them. But
Sure.
if you're that aunt or uncle that gets taught this system and they divulge and share with you, you got to break that confidentiality in that one. So that's my last one, is like, get that professional help when it's needed. There's no need for us to keep